One of the fundamental principles on which the EU is based is the free movement of goods. Sadly, however, in the context of e-commerce, the practical application of this principle is sometimes left wanting. Over the next few minutes, I'm going to explore why the European Commission is trying to achieve better access for consumers and businesses to the online world. Moreover, we'll look at how the Commission is going to achieve this through its digital single market strategy and ultimately what this means for e-commerce businesses. There are still numerous barriers which need to be overcome to realise the digital single market, such as the lack of harmonisation of consumer regulations and contract terms, geo-blocking, and the somewhat less glamorous but equally important issue of the parcel delivery regime. So we'll take a look at these in turn and then assess whether or not the measures that may be proposed are likely to achieve the Commission's aims of reducing unfair discrimination, both against consumers and e-commerce providers within the EU. 28 national consumer protection regulations and variations in contract law throughout the EU remains a huge barrier to e-commerce platforms looking to trade throughout the single market. So this is why many e-tailers still only offer their services and sell their goods and services within the single member state in which they're established. Only 7% of SMEs sell cross-border. The harmonisation of what used to be the old distance selling regulations into the Consumer Rights Directive is a good step in the right direction. It's sought to strengthen consumer rights and harmonise these right across the EU while balancing the need for European businesses to still be able to function and not be tied up in red tape. And although it ushers in a uniform requirements for things like the provision of pre-contractual information and cancellation rights, there is still no single set of rules which governs contract terms for online sales. I mean, you sort of need to ask, is this even possible? And if it was possible, would consumers sort of gain confidence in buying goods and services across borders? One way that this may be addressed is through the Common European Sales Law. This isn't a new idea. In 2011, the Commission looked at implementing something like this, which would provide, a single set of contract terms or a minimum set which retailers and consumers would agree to for specific transactions. And while ultimately this didn't take, it is looking to be repurposed under the auspices of the DSM strategy as an amended proposal. Although these challenges will still be significant to get through a law such as this, especially given the intersection between consumer regulations and contract law, it's definitely something worth pursuing as the outcome will surely benefit both consumers and online businesses. The Commission is also likely to look at a couple of other areas such as guarantee periods and also remedies for defective goods or downloads. There have been recent changes within the UK market with the introduction of the Consumer Rights Act, and this has taken a big step forward for any member state within the EU in respect of digital content. And so it'd be interesting to see whether or not the European Commission adopts similar approaches to actually use the UK position as the gold standard, or if not, how the UK Consumer Rights Act is going to mesh with whatever the Commission ends up proposing. And we should know more about this by the end of 2015, when the Commission's due to announce its proposals on this harmonised EU approach to online purchases, mandatory consumer contractual provisions, and also the right for businesses to choose to rely on national law. And this will go hand in hand with the Commission's agenda for 2016 to also review the regulation on the consumer protection cooperation to clarify the enforcement and monitoring powers of local authorities. Obviously, having a uniform set of contractual terms will be a great thing, especially when consumers have access to a truly single market. Geo-blocking, however, is not just about being able to access the iPlayer when you go on holiday to Spain or France. It also was about the prevention of consumers being able to access online e-commerce platforms and websites in their home jurisdiction, or if they are able to access them, not being able to access the same goods and services for the same price as they may be in another country. There are instances where this type of discrimination, which happens through either rerouting people to their home website or not offering certain services or goods, can be justified, and that's usually where there's a country-specific law which prohibits that type of practice. But in general, geo-blocking or geo-localisation really does go against some of the fundamental principles of the EU and does create quite a fragmented what would have been a single market. And this is why the Commission is looking to restrict the ability of e-commerce retailers from breaking up the market in this way. Now, it's important to note that the building blocks for doing this are already largely in place through the Services Directive, which already prohibits discrimination on the basis of nationality or place of residence. However, that directive is riddled with quite a lot of exceptions, which doesn't make it then a really comprehensive way to regulate this. So on the 24th of September 2015 this year, the Commission launched its public consultation into geo-blocking to get opinions from industry as to whether or not and how it can try to remove unjustified barriers for the sale and purchase of goods across the member states. And this is looking to conclude by the 18th of December. The Commission is then likely to make various proposals both in relation to the Services Directive but also in relation to the E-commerce Directive, and we should see those in due course throughout the course of 2016. And finally, onto the last piece of the consumer puzzle, which is parcel delivery. Against the backdrop of cross-border tariffs between member states, that are imposed by national post authorities being 2 to 5 times higher than the equivalent services for within a member state delivery, it's no surprise that retailers are really struggling with providing services across border and wanting to be able to do that. But it's also an issue for consumers, with over 90% of surveyed consumers citing low delivery costs and convenient returns policies being a key consideration when buying online. So in June this year, the industry conducted a self-regulation exercise where we've now seen improvements that they've imposed on themselves in terms of track and trace services, but also in relation to returns procedures. And then in the first half of 2016, we're likely to see the remaining elements of this piece being, price and transparency also being addressed. So there it is. We've had a really quick canter through the digital single market agenda and what it might mean for e-commerce platforms and also online retailers. There's going to be a lot more discussion over the coming months, and whatever the Commission ends up proposing, it's no doubt going to be very significant for both online businesses and also consumers. Thank you.